The rhythmic, insistent drip of condensation from the tattered canvas ceiling was the last thing Captain Kalen Reese expected to hear. He'd expected the heavy, mechanical sigh of the tent's ventilation unit, the distant, muffled cadence of sentries' boots, or maybe the familiar, grating static of the comms radio. But the drip, soft, wet, and too close, was utterly alien to the sterile, fortified hum of Forward Outpost Delta 7. Kalen wasn't just tired, he was bone-deep exhausted, having spent the last 72 hours charting the shifting perimeter of the contested Red Zone. A scarred, obsidian wasteland where the war against the KRLL had stagnated into a brutal, grinding stalemate. His own tent, a reinforced field bunker meant for single occupancy, should have been a vault of familiar, empty quiet. He shifted, attempting to roll onto his side on the thin cot, but a sudden heavy warmth pinned his chest. It was a weight that felt organic, not structural, and it radiated an unsettling, intense heat. His body, trained by years of combat to react first and question later, instantly tensed. His fingers twitched, searching for the familiar cold grip of the combat knife he always kept strapped to the cot frame. It wasn't there. Kalen's eyes snapped open. The tent's internal lighting system was dark, but a deep, throbbing crimson glow illuminated the interior, not the harsh emergency red of the tactical screens, but a soft, pulsing light that seemed to emanate from the very air. In that blood-red ambient light he saw her. She was nestled against him, her head resting just below his chin, the curve of her skull fitting perfectly against his shoulder. Her weight was substantial, a luxurious, dangerous pressure on his bare torso. He could feel the soft, quick flutter of her breath against his neck, a delicate, almost feline purr rumbling deep in her chest. Panic didn't flood him. A cold, clinical shock seized his mind first. KRLL. The myths, the training simulations, the grim casualty reports, they all flashed through his head. The KRLL were the enemy, relentless, winged predators of the night, their technology superior, their bodies formidable, their nature, by all accounts, monstrous. But none of the reports mentioned this intimate, terrifying proximity. He risked a slow, agonizing turn of his head. Her face was breathtakingly beautiful, an impossible, severe elegance that was clearly non-human. High, sharp cheekbones, a delicate jawline, and skin the color of polished moonlight. Her eyes, currently closed, were framed by long, dark lashes, but even in slumber, the faint, internal glow of a pulsating violet light was visible beneath the lids. And then there were the details that confirmed his terror. The twin, spiraling horns that swept back from her silver-streaked hair, the armored plating that covered her shoulders and forearms, sculpted in deep, Gothic curves, and the enormous leathery wing that was draped carelessly over his legs, its membrane a deep, mottled scarlet torn slightly near the tip, the source of the tent's ceiling damage. But the most arresting feature, the one that paralyzed his military training, was the symbol etched into her chest, visible in the low-cut, silver breastplate she wore. It was a complex, glowing cerulean sigil that pulsed slowly, mirroring the quiet thrum he felt beneath his own hand, which he now realized with a fresh jolt of horror, was resting right above her heart. She was the queen. No ordinary KRLL drone or soldier wore armor of that sophistication, or carried that regal, terrifying presence. The KRLL queen, Serana, whose image was plastered across every coalition high-value target briefing, was lying on him, purring. Kalen's breathing hitched. It was barely a whisper of air, but it was enough. Her eyes snapped open. They were a terrifying, incandescent violet, glowing brighter than any light source in the tent. The purring instantly stopped, replaced by a deep, resonant silence that felt heavy enough to crush him. He stared back, refusing to flinch, refusing to give her the satisfaction of fear, even as every instinct screamed at him to break free and fight. She didn't move. Her expression remained unreadable, a mixture of profound weariness and ancient, predatory calculation. She lifted a hand, her long fingers tipped with wickedly sharp black nails, and slowly, deliberately, traced the contour of his collarbone. The touch was unnervingly soft, a feather-light brush against his skin that nonetheless sent shivers of pure adrenaline through his system. You should not be awake. Her voice was not a hiss, nor a growl, but a low, melodious whisper that resonated not just in the air, but somehow directly inside his skull. The accent was alien, precise, and utterly commanding. I slept in an empty tent, Kalen managed, his voice coming out rough and dry, strained by the effort of keeping it steady. I usually wake up alone. A ghost of a smile, cold and knowing, touched her lips. Indeed. A solitude you will not experience again for some time, Captain Kalen Reese. He felt the sudden electric pull of her psychic presence, a probe against the walls of his mind, searching, not aggressively but with surgical precision. He slammed his mental defenses shut, a habit ingrained from fighting KRL psions, but she barely registered the resistance. Futile, she murmured, her violet gaze deepening as if looking through him, into the distant structures of his memory and thought. I'm not looking for secrets, soldier. Merely, confirmation. Her hand dropped from his chest to the cot, and with a disconcerting grace she shifted her weight, rolling off him to sit on the edge of the cot. The movement revealed the true scope of her power, the muscular wings flexing slightly, the intricate details of the armored plates, the sheer unnatural presence of her form in his tiny, desperate space. Kalen sat up swiftly, pulling the thin, sweat-dampened blanket over his waist, his eyes darting to his sidearm holster, which was now empty. Do not waste your effort, Serana said, following his gaze. On the small, folding field table, his standard-issue laser pistol lay disassembled, its components meticulously arranged, cleaned, and organized as if waiting for inspection. It was a subtle, overwhelming display of superior speed and knowledge. Why am I alive? Kalen asked, his gaze locked onto her profile. The red glow from the tactical screens near the tent flap, now reflecting in her silvery skin, gave her an even more infernal aspect. Why am I not another casualty report? She turned, crossing one armored leg over the other, completely at ease in the cramped human space. She looked less like a prisoner and more like an impatient sovereign granting a tedious audience. Because you are significant, Captain. Highly significant. Your species calls us monsters, yet they do not understand the subtle architecture of the cosmos, she said, her voice dripping with ancient disdain. We did not come to consume you, Kalen Reese. We came to survive, and for that survival we require a key. She pointed to the tactical screen near his cot, a small, flexible terminal displaying the local reconnaissance data, overlaid with coalition troop movements. On the screen, a new unauthorized data overlay, an intricate glowing blue schematic, had appeared, focused not on the battlefield, but on a detailed, rotating model of the KRLL Queen's own DNA structure. My race is dying, she stated, the purr returning to her voice, but this time edged with profound sorrow. The genetic instability that grants us our power is also destroying us, collapsing our lineages, breeding us into extinction. We searched for millennia, across 1,000 shattered worlds, for the necessary counteragent, the unique genetic signature that could stabilize the KRYLL genome. She leaned closer, the scent of ozone and something wild, like crushed night-blooming flowers filling the air. Her violet eyes fixed on his. We found it here, Kalen. Hidden in the most common of hosts. In the most ordinary of soldiers. In you. She reached out, and her armored fingers gently touched the center of his chest, exactly where the glowing sigil had been on her own. You are the key, Captain. The final piece of the puzzle. You slept in an empty tent, but you woke up in the beginning of a history. Kalen swallowed, the blood pounding in his ears. The cold fear was being replaced by a bewildering, dangerous clarity. He wasn't kidnapped for interrogation or murder. He was kidnapped for procreation. Or worse, for genetic harvesting. I won't cooperate, he stated flatly. Serana looked genuinely amused, the first hint of genuine emotion he'd seen. She stood up, her frame towering over him, her wings unfolding slightly, brushing the canvas roof with a dry, rustling sound. Your cooperation is optional, Captain. Your participation is not. We are leaving. Now, do you wish to walk or shall I carry you? She reached down and before he could formulate a response, she grabbed his forearm. Her grip was iron-hard, yet the touch was strangely gentle, almost protective. The glow from the screens cast her in a terrible, glorious light as she began to pull him towards the ripped flap of the tent, towards the red-lit, war-torn night, and towards a future that was no longer his own. He was no longer a soldier fighting the KRLL Queen. He was her essential cargo. The movement was not a flight in the conventional sense, but a blurring, terrifying rush through the night air. Serana did not carry Kalen like a captive flung over a shoulder. She held him pressed against her armored chest, one arm clamped tightly across his back, the other steadying his legs. Her enormous, powerful wings beat the cold air with thunderous efficiency, lifting them above the scarred, dead landscape of the red zone with impossible speed. Below, the flickering lights of forward outpost Delta 7 quickly shrank to dull, insignificant pinpricks before vanishing entirely. Kalen felt a dizzying mixture of sheer terror and reluctant, awestruck admiration. The KRLL, as depicted in coalition propaganda, were savage beasts. Serana, however, was a force of nature, precise, controlled, and executing this high-risk extraction with chilling professional ease. He could feel the cold metal of her armor against his skin, and the powerful rhythmic thump of her KRLL heart beneath the breastplate, the purring noise now absent, replaced by a focused, driving intensity. He tried to shift, to gain leverage, but her grip was implacable. Struggle is illogical, Captain, she projected directly into his mind, the thought sharp and clear, cutting through the wind's roar. The fall would kill you and I require you intact. And if I scream? He countered, his voice muffled against her armor. Then your lungs will fill with high-altitude dust before the sound travels 10 meters. Save your breath, Kaelin Reese. You will need it where we are going. The flight lasted only minutes, but it felt like an eternity suspended between life and oblivion. The barren, scorched terrain below soon gave way to a dense, alien jungle, one Kaelin didn't recognize from any geological survey maps. It was a forest of towering, obsidian trees whose leaves glowed with a faint, bioluminescent blue, painting the ground below in eerie shadows. Then through a sudden sharp break in the clouds Kaelin saw it, the Crimson Spire. It was not a hidden bunker or an underground complex, but a colossal structure rising sheer out of the jungle canopy, cutting into the midnight sky. It looked less like a building and more like a monstrous asymmetrical crystal formation, hundreds of stories high, glowing from within with the same deep, pulsating crimson light that had filled his tent. It was the epitome of KRYL superiority, a technological marvel concealed by dense flora, untouched by the Coalition's most dedicated orbital scans. Serana descended rapidly, diving towards one of the spire's many terraces, the air screaming past them. They landed on a polished metallic surface with barely a jar, the massive wings folding in with the fluid, powerful grace of a great cat settling down. Kaelin was immediately released, stumbling slightly as his feet hit the cold deck. He instinctively looked around, his body readying for a fight, but the terrace was empty save for the two of them. High, reinforced crystalline walls surrounded the landing pad, and the sound of the wind was instantly muffled. Serana stood before him, her violet eyes assessing his dazed state. She gestured toward a massive, arching entryway, where the crimson light was deepest. Welcome to the heart of the KRLL Dominion. My citadel. Kaelin straightened his uniform trousers, feeling exposed and vulnerable without his weapons. He met her gaze, focusing on the tactical reality rather than the terrifying presence she projected. Your Dominion is on a dying planet and your race is failing. Seems like a poor choice of real estate, Queen. The edge of a frown touched her perfect features. Your species finds comfort in such trivial observations. Come. The others await. She led him through the archway and into the spire's interior. The architecture was breathtakingly advanced and aggressively alien. The hallways were not built of conventional walls but seemed carved from a single dark mineral that flowed and pulsed with light. Data streams, rendered in brilliant blue and violet energy, flowed across the ceilings like rivers, converging on central nodes. There were no audible sounds, no air conditioning hum, no footfalls, just the soft, pervasive thrum of power. They passed several figures, KRL soldiers, taller and broader than Serana, encased in utilitarian black armor, their helmets concealing their faces. Every single one paused, their stance instantly shifting to a deep, formalized bow as Serana approached. Their movements were entirely silent and respectful, a stark contrast to the human military's crisp salute. Kaelin felt their eyes or the sensors behind their helmets fix on him, the soft, pale, unarmed specimen walking beside their queen. He and Serana reached a vast, circular chamber that seemed to be the Citadel's nerve center. Holographic projections shimmered in the center, displaying complex astronomical data, battle simulations, and, unnervingly, biological schematics that looked suspiciously similar to the one of his own DNA he had seen in the tent. Waiting for them were three other high-ranking KRL, distinguished by intricate silver and black robes draped over their light armor. These were the consuls, the elders of the KRLL Council. They did not bow, but their heads inclined slightly in acknowledgement of the queen. The KRL nearest to Kaelin, whose robes were the deepest black, spoke, his voice dry and ancient, delivered not through a whisper, but a resonant mental projection that scraped against Kaelin's mind. Serana. You risked the entire campaign for this, specimen. Serana stood tall, shielding Kaelin slightly, establishing her authority instantly. I retrieved the key, Consul Varys. The threat to my person was negligible. The threat to our race had I failed was absolute. Consul Varys, a creature with darker, more pronounced horns and eyes that were a chilling, pale gold, approached Kaelin cautiously, sniffing the air near him. Kaelin had the distinct impression of a highly intelligent predator examining a fascinating new lure. It is merely a human male. Weak. Fragile. The reports claimed this genetic marker would be found in a host of significance. Significance is relative, varies, Serana cut in sharply, her voice echoing the Queen's supreme authority. The stability vector is present in $100% purity. His military rank and coalition knowledge are simply a bonus. He is not a combatant, he is a component. She placed a proprietary hand on Kaelin's arm, not as a gentle gesture, but as a clear demarcation of ownership. Captain Kaelin Reese is now under my direct protection and observation. He is our most precious resource. Treat him as such. No interrogation, no sampling, no harm. He will be acclimated to his new surroundings. He is not a prisoner, consuls. He is a guest. The final word hung heavy in the air, a clear command. Kalen knew it was a lie designed to keep the council members from dissecting him prematurely, but he appreciated the temporary safety it afforded. A guest, under the queen's gaze, was safer than a prisoner under the consul's knives. Serana dismissed the others with a single imperious wave, and they vanished through shimmering portals built into the wall. She then turned back to Kalen, her expression softening marginally, though still miles from true warmth. Your accommodation awaits. It is designed to mitigate your human needs for rest and privacy. It is the finest chamber in the spire, Captain. Use it well. Tomorrow we begin the integration process. What exactly does integration involve? Kalen asked, trying to sound more curious than terrified. She took a step closer, her silhouette imposing in the crimson light. It involves the merging of our futures, Kalen. Your unique genetic structure is the catalyst for the KRYLL's survival. We need the vector passed on. We need healthy offspring. Kalen felt a cold, hard knot form in his stomach. The implication was clear, direct, and terrifyingly non-negotiable. He was not a savior. He was a biological resource. And if I refuse the mating process? He challenged, staring into the bright violet pools of her eyes. Serana merely smiled again, a slow, predatory curve of the lips. A queen does not ask for permission, Captain. She takes what is required. But I am a merciful sovereign. I would prefer your agreement over your forced submission. Rest now. Your human exhaustion is already evident. A moment later, a portal shimmered open beside her. It was not the cold, metal frame of a door, but a rippling sheet of golden light. Enter. You are safe there, Kalen. Safer, perhaps, than you ever were among your own kind. She stepped aside, granting him passage into the heart of the KRLL Dominion, leaving him alone to face the overwhelming reality. He was locked in the Queen's Citadel, destined to be the essential link between humanity and the KRLL, and his only protection was the same terrifying creature who demanded his complete genetic servitude. Kalen stepped through the golden portal. The change in atmosphere was immediate and profound. The main corridors of the Citadel had been cold and charged with power, but his designated chamber was an exercise in luxurious, almost suffocating tranquility. The portal closed silently behind him, leaving him in a space that was vast, circular, and lit by a soft, diffused light that seemed to change color with his breathing, oscillating between warm amber and calming sage green. He ran a hand over the nearest wall. It felt smooth, warm, and yielding, more organic than mineral. The room was not cluttered with furniture, but functional structures seemed to rise seamlessly from the floor. A low, wide platform covered with incredibly fine, plush textiles served as a bed, easily big enough for 4 human beings. Near the center, a sunken pool of water shimmered, the air above it smelling faintly of mountain ozone and exotic herbs, a hydrotherapy bath, he realized. This was not a cell, it was a habitat designed for comfort and monitoring. His military training immediately kicked in, superseding the disorientation. Assess the environment. Identify threats. Locate exits. He began a slow, deliberate circuit of the room. The perimeter was entirely wall-to-wall seamless material. There were no visible doors, no windows, and no ventilation shafts large enough for even a child to crawl through. Every square centimeter screamed secure containment. The only points of entry or exit were the light-based portals, controlled by the Queen or the Citadel's core intelligence. He was sealed in. Kalen found a panel embedded in the wall near the bathing pool. It looked like polished black glass. He touched it tentatively, and the surface bloomed with soft violet light. It displayed a comprehensive interface, rendered in the flowing, complex KRLL script, but thankfully one option flashed in Universal Coalition Standard: communication. He selected it, hoping to find an external comms link, but the panel instantly displayed Serana's serene, beautiful face, projected in a clear, 3-dimensional hologram. Her eyes, less intensely luminous now, held a spark of amused patience. If you are looking for the frequency to radio your coalition commanders, Kalen Reese, you will be disappointed, she projected mentally. This panel is for internal communication only. If you require sustenance, environmental changes, or my presence, you may summon it. Kalen felt a surge of frustration. You anticipated this. I anticipate all obvious human responses. You are a soldier, Kalen. Your primary objective is escape. Mine is to ensure you cannot achieve it. Her image paused, tilting her head slightly. You are hungry. Request the nutrient intake. You have not consumed energy since yesterday morning, and your system requires stabilization. He gritted his teeth. I'll eat when I've secured my exit strategy. Your body does not negotiate with exhaustion. When you are ready to be rational, the necessary sustenance will appear in the alcove near the bed. Enjoy the amenities, Captain. I have ensured your captivity is comfortable. The hologram dissolved, leaving the panel inert. Kalen slammed his fist lightly against the soft wall, the surface absorbing the shock without a sound. He paced the room twice more, confirming the absolute lack of physical vulnerabilities. The only way out was through the queen. He ran the water in the hydrotherapy pool. It filled rapidly with warm, highly oxygenated liquid that was milky white and smelled faintly metallic. He stripped off his dust-covered, sweat-soaked uniform and slid into the bath, sinking fully into the warmth. The water was instantly soothing, working on muscles that had been tense for days. It was a calculated move. Keep the prisoner relaxed, well-fed, and in peak biological condition for the inevitable integration. As he lay there, his mind, freed from the immediate stress of the outside world, began to sort through the fragmented KRYL data he had briefly seen on his tactical screen, the DNA schematic. The KRYL are dying. It was the ultimate truth. Serana wasn't conquering Earth for resources. She was here for him, for his unique genetic component. This gave him a slim, terrifying leverage. He was too valuable to destroy, too vital to be injured. Kalen emerged from the bath, feeling physically restored but mentally agitated. He found the alcove Serana mentioned. A section of the wall had recessed, revealing a compartment containing several nutrient bars and a flask of cool, purified water. He ate quickly, the engineered food surprisingly palatable. Now that the immediate needs were met, he focused on intelligence. He returned to the communication panel and began experimenting with the KRYL script. He didn't understand the language, but the basic structure of the interface was universal. He quickly discovered the environmental settings. Changing the lighting, temperature, and atmospheric pressure was simple enough. But one icon, shaped like a stylized, interlocking spiral, repeatedly caught his eye. He translated the visual data streams he had captured during the flight over the Citadel. The spiral symbol corresponded to the KRYL's internal energy management system, the core reactor. He focused on the spiral icon, and after several deliberate attempts, a cascade of encrypted information flooded the screen, too fast for any human eye to process. Kalen quickly initiated a small hidden data logging program built into his bionic wristcom, a piece of military hardware so advanced the KRL hadn't bothered to remove it, assuming it was useless without a broadcast signal. The program could only store raw data, not translate it, but it was a start. He was compiling an electronic map of the enemy's heart. As he worked, a low, sensual music, unlike any human composition, began to filter into the room, a deep, thrumming bass overlaid with high, keening vocalizations. It was deliberately distracting, designed to promote a sense of passive complacency. Then the portal shimmered open again. Serana entered, no longer wearing her full combat armor, but a simple, elegant gown made of a dark, flowing material that clung to her powerful frame. Her wings were sheathed close to her back, and her horns seemed less threatening in the softer light. She walked towards him, her movements silent, predatory, and undeniably feminine. "Your escape attempt was predictable," she said, her voice soft. She noticed the active data panel. "Your current attempt at data theft is less so. I am impressed, Captain. But ultimately, futile." She moved the nutrient bars aside and sat gracefully on the edge of the large bed, facing him. "I am here to inform you of the schedule. The initial phase of integration will begin at solar rise. You will be medically assessed to ensure the optimal environment for the gene transfer. It is a necessary formality." Kalen shut down his wristcom, storing the data. He stood his ground, ignoring the visual distraction she presented. "And if I refuse the medical assessment? Or the transfer? You can't force the success of genetic merging. It requires two willing participants." Serana's violet eyes narrowed slightly, betraying a flicker of annoyance at his stubbornness. "That is a human fallacy. Your species places too much emphasis on cooperation. The KRL have mastered the biological sciences, Kalen. We can isolate the specific pathways necessary for successful conception and stimulate them externally. The process will be efficient, thorough, and highly regulated. Whether you are willing or not is irrelevant to the success." She leaned back on her elbows, the action pulling the soft gown taut across her chest, highlighting the faint blue glow of the sigil beneath her skin. "But I told you I prefer consensus. Coercion is messy and it displeases me. Tell me what you require to make this transition tolerable." Kalen saw the opening. This wasn't a negotiation with a human, but a barter with a queen who valued efficiency and hated unnecessary friction. "I require access to data," Kalen stated firmly. "Full, unencrypted KRYL data on the war, the KRYL life cycle, and the nature of the genetic deficiency. I need to understand what I am giving my life force to save. If you want my willing participation, you will treat me as an ally, not livestock. Serana considered this, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched, filled only by the low alien thrum of the music. An audacious demand for a prisoner, she finally conceded. But useful. Knowledge makes you less unpredictable. Very well, Captain. Complete access to the archives is impossible. But I will provide you with a carefully selected, curated data stream. Information that will illuminate the truth of the KRYLL civilization and the necessity of your purpose. She rose and walked towards the golden portal, turning before she activated it. Consider this a gesture of good faith, Kalen. We are not demons. We are scientists seeking survival. Now rest. Tomorrow you enter the next phase of being the key. The portal flashed and she was gone. Kalen was left alone again, standing in his lavish, impenetrable prison. He had traded compliance for information, a dangerous bargain. He now had the means to gather intelligence, and a fragile window of time before the Queen took what she required, irrevocably changing his world and the fate of 2 species. The promised data stream arrived an hour later. It wasn't delivered through the main communication panel, but manifested as a localized holographic sphere that hovered near the head of Kalen's bed. It pulsed with a gentle violet-blue light, and Kalen immediately recognized it as a bespoke interface, designed to protect the Queen's network while allowing him access to the curated information. Kalen spent the rest of the night sifting through the data. It was overwhelming, complex, and written in a highly condensed KRYL dialect that his wristcom's rudimentary translation software struggled to keep pace with. Yet, the information, once deciphered, was a series of slow, devastating shocks that began to dismantle his ingrained coalition view of the war. The KRYL had not arrived on Earth as invaders seeking conquest, but as refugees fleeing a galactic-scale ecological collapse of their home system. Their advanced technology was not for war, but for long-distance survival and terraforming. The Red Zone wasn't just a military scar. It was a consequence of a desperate KRYL attempt to stabilize Earth's atmosphere to match their diminishing needs, an attempt that had failed disastrously and only solidified human resistance. The data presented the KRYL's history as a glorious, millennia-spanning civilization that had reached technological and biological peaks, only to be brought low by a cellular mutation, the very same genetic instability that granted them their immense power and longevity. The KRYL were not dying because of the war, they were fighting the war because they were dying. The average lifespan of a KRYL drone was now less than 50 Earth years, a terrifying collapse for a species that once lived for centuries. The Queens, the reproductive and political anchors of the race, were the only ones showing partial resistance to the blight, but even their reproductive viability was fading. Kalen reviewed the war archives. The KRYL had attempted contact with human governments decades before the first shot was fired, offering advanced technology in exchange for territorial security and, most critically, genetic research access. The coalition, however, had viewed the winged, powerful KRYL as an existential threat, rejecting all diplomacy and initiating orbital strikes. The KRYL had simply responded with overwhelming force, not out of malice, but out of the necessity to defend their last desperate foothold. As the sun began to filter into his chamber, a beautiful, synthetic light that replaced the violet glow, Kalen realized the grim truth. His entire life, his military career, and the deaths of his comrades were based on a lie. They were fighting desperate survivors, not malicious invaders. The final section of the curated data focused on the genetic solution, the dollar stabilization $vector $. Kalen's DNA contained a naturally occurring sequence that, when introduced to the KRYL genome, neutralized the self-destructive mutation. It was a genetic fluke, present in less than $0.0001% of the human population, and Kalen Reese, the decorated captain of the coalition, was the unique bearer. He wasn't an enemy, he was a biological miracle. He was the hope of the KRYL. The portal shimmered open exactly at solar rise. This time, Serana was accompanied by 2 KRYL medics, slender, white-armored figures whose faces were covered by specialized visors. They carried no weapons, only gleaming, crystalline medical tools. Serana approached Kalen, who was now dressed in a clean, soft tunic provided by the Citadel's amenities, his eyes weary but intensely focused. "You have reviewed the data," she stated, not as a question but a confirmation. "I have," Kalen replied, his voice calm. "Your race is facing extinction. And you didn't invade, you crashed into a species too frightened to listen." Serana nodded, a hint of respect entering her gaze. "Accuracy. A rare quality in your species' assessment of us. Does this change your resistance, Captain? Do you now see the necessity?" "I see the necessity of saving your people," Kalen admitted, standing up fully. "But that doesn't make me a willing breeding partner, Your Majesty. I am the key, not a sperm donor. You may have the medical technology to force conception, but I can still withhold my will. And if you force me, I will ensure that the cooperation you desire, the data I provide, ends the moment I am used. Serana studied him, a flicker of something akin to intrigue in her eyes. The Kerwell rarely encountered such stubborn defiance in the face of absolute power. An interesting counter-argument. You are leveraging your emotional compliance against my biological imperative, she mused. She waved a hand at the medics who stepped back, their crystalline tools retracting. The assessment can wait. I prefer to begin the process with stability, not stress. I need your mind clear, Kalen. I need you to understand that what you offer is not servitude, but a peace offering from humanity, the only one we have received. She stepped closer, her tone lowering to a deep, resonant whisper that was meant for his ears only. The integration process is not merely about children, Captain. It is about a blood bond. For the key to be fully accepted by the KRWL, you must be bound to the Queen. To me. She reached out and placed her hand, cold and armored, against his cheek. Your cooperation will be rewarded with a unique position, not as a prisoner but as the consort of the Spire. You will have influence, authority, and safety. Refusal gives me no option but to treat you as a disposable resource. Which path serves your purpose best, Kalen? Before Kalen could respond, a sudden high-pitched alarm began to blare throughout the chamber. It was a piercing, synthetic cry, a sound of immediate high-priority crisis that instantly shattered the quiet tension. Serana's expression froze. Her violet eyes became pure, blinding light, and her wings snapped taut against her back. Intrusion, she hissed, turning immediately to the comms panel. Varys report. The image of Consul Varys appeared on the hologram, his face contorted in alarm. My queen. Coalition heavy assets have breached the outer atmospheric perimeter. They are using a classified spectral cloak. They tracked the energy signature of your extraction flight. They know the Citadel's location. We are under orbital bombardment. Serana's head snapped back towards Kalen, her gaze pure, dangerous fury. They are here for you. You are a prize to be recovered, even if it means destroying the only hope for my people. Kalen felt a sickening lurch. His military family had come for him, not understanding that by doing so, they were condemning the KRYLL to extinction and potentially dragging the whole planet into a catastrophic final war. I didn't call them. Kalen protested. I know, Serana said, the rage settling into icy determination. She grabbed his arm with a grip that threatened to crush bone. But now your usefulness as a guest has ended. You are now the central target in a war that has just arrived at my doorstep. The integration must be accelerated. She pulled him towards the portal, which she violently ripped open, revealing not the quiet central chamber, but a swirling, chaotic vortex of light and sound. We are moving to the core reactor level. It is the deepest, most secure part of the spire. You will be safe there. The integration begins now. She dragged Kalen through the portal just as the entire spire shuddered violently from the impact of the first orbital strike. Kalen felt the dizzying rush of rapid transit, his vision blurring, realizing that he was no longer a pawn, but the eye of the storm. He was heading deep into the heart of the KRWL civilization, with the Queen determined to bind him to her forever, while the world above tried to blast them both to ashes. The world outside the portal dissolved into a vortex of noise and chaos. Kalen felt himself accelerating through a transit tunnel, the walls flashing with emergency indicators. Serana's grip was a vice, pulling him deeper into the Crimson Spire, away from the Coalition's fury. They burst out onto a vast, circular platform suspended high above a glowing chasm. This was the core reactor level, the engine room of the Citadel. The air here vibrated with immense energy. The central chasm pulsed with a blinding, white-hot KRYL plasma source that fed the entire structure. The light was harsh, exposing the rough, unpolished nature of this deepest sanctuary. KRYL engineers, encased in specialized hazard suits, worked frantically, diverting power and bracing against the continuous tremors caused by the orbital strikes. Each impact sent a massive low groan through the very foundations of the spire. Serana shoved Kalen toward a metallic dais at the center of the platform. Sit. Now. The Coalition will pierce the outer shell within the next 15 cycles. We have moments, not hours. Kalen hesitated, his eyes fixed on the chaos around them. You're doing this here? Amidst a siege? Necessity dictates the ritual. Serana's voice was strained, the royal calm replaced by the fierce urgency of a cornered sovereign. She activated the dais. Crystalline restraints shot out, encircling Kalen's wrists, ankles, and neck, locking him into a semi-reclined position. This is not a negotiation, Kalen. This is the survival of my species. I must secure the vector before your Coalition succeeds in killing you or us. She pressed a control on her wrist. The dais hissed, and a network of microneedles extended from the restraints, piercing Kalen's skin. He felt a cold, sharp burning sensation as a powerful cocktail of KRLL biological agents and hyperstimulants flooded his system. Serana knelt before him, her violet eyes burning with focused intent. She stripped off her flowing robe, revealing the complex structure of her silver armor beneath, which was now crisscrossed with faint, glowing conduits that connected directly to the dais. The process requires deep synchronization, she explained, her voice low and hypnotic, cutting through the alarm sirens. My armor, my second skin, will interface with your central nervous system. I will absorb the vector into my reproductive core, and in exchange I will expose you to the full psychic depth of the KRYLL consciousness. She placed both hands on his chest, right over his heart, and the blue sigil on her own armor flared violently. The connection felt like a massive electrical surge, but instead of pain, Kalen was hit by a tidal wave of pure, condensed memory and emotion. He saw millennia flash past, the KRWL Golden Age, their cities built of light and song, the horror of the Great Blight as their children began to wither, the cold, terrifying solitude of interstellar travel as they searched for a new home, and finally the crippling fear and desperation that drove their actions on Earth. He felt Serana's own personal weight, the crushing loneliness of leading a dying people, the burden of being the last viable queen, and the absolute, unyielding resolve to prevent their extinction. It wasn't propaganda. It was the raw, unadulterated soul of the KRWL. They were not evil, they were simply desperate. The infusion of KRWL biology and Serana's psychic influence was tearing down the walls of Kalen's mind, mixing his identity with hers. He saw his own memories reflected back to him through her eyes. His squad's faces, the coalition's war room, and the terrible realization that his people were the ones who had rejected peace. As the physical merging reached its peak, a sensation of overwhelming heat and power surging between them, Serana pressed her forehead against his, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The human coalition is not attacking a military target, Kalen, she whispered, her voice both terrified and triumphant. They are attacking a hospital. Our nurseries, our remaining elders, they are all beneath this platform. If this core is compromised, Earth will lose a vital defense system and my people will perish. Bjarke. The spire roared. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the blinding, unstable glow of the core reactor. The floor bucked violently. A coalition deep penetration missile had hit close to the primary shielding. The shield is failing. An engineer shrieked mentally. Kalen's military mind, now fused with Serana's strategic genius, processed the data instantly. The coalition's attack wasn't aimed at his recovery, it was aimed at extermination. His superiors believed the risk of a KRYLL human hybrid future was too great. The integration was complete. He felt the KRYLL life force pulsing within him, a secondary, powerful heartbeat. He was bound. He was the consort. Serana pulled back, her eyes wide with exhaustion and focus. It is done. The vector is secure. But we are not safe. They will breach the reactor chamber next. You must choose, Kalen. Your coalition or the survival of your children's race. Kalen looked up at the ceiling, imagining the coalition dropships preparing to deploy his former comrades. Men he respected, men who were blindly following orders to kill the last hope of the KRWL. He looked at Serana, at the terrified engineers, and felt the innocent, vulnerable KRYL life forms sheltered below. He made his choice. The coalition has to stop, Kalen said, his voice now layered with the melodic resonance of KRYL telepathy. I can reach them. My signal is coded. But I need to get out of this chamber and onto a secure comms array. Serana looked at him, her uncertainty replaced by a fierce, blazing trust. She reached to the dais controls and released his restraints. The primary comm array is on the spire's highest peak. It will be the first place your forces attempt to land, she warned. Then that's where I go. I can transmit a full, unencrypted report, including the KRYLL history and the existence of the vector. It's the only truth they will listen to, Kalen said, pulling his tattered tunic back over his torso. The KRYL biological agents coursing through him made him feel faster, stronger, and more clear-headed than ever before. Serana extended her hand, not as a queen to a subject, but as a partner. Then we fly, consort. For the future. Kalen grasped her armored hand. The connection was electric, binding. He was Captain Kalen Reese, soldier of humanity, but he was also the consort, the key, and the guardian of the KRYL future. With a final, shattering tremor, a section of the core reactor wall exploded, and a blinding stream of plasma shot into the cavern. Serana grabbed Kalen, her powerful wings snapping open, and with a single desperate beat, they launched themselves up and out of the failing reactor chamber, flying towards the treacherous summit of the Crimson Spire, straight into the heart of the coalition attack. The war was no longer between two armies, it was between Kalen and his past. The ascent was a vertical nightmare of shredded metal and screaming alarms. Serana flew with the desperate focus of a warrior, her movements guided by the intense KRLL energy now flowing through Kalen. They were moving faster than any dropship, spiraling up the central shaft towards the Citadel's peak, the location of the vulnerable primary comm array. The Coalition's orbital bombardment had done its job. The upper levels were a fractured maze of buckled plating and flickering power conduits. Fire and smoke billowed through the shaft, but Serana navigated the chaos with impossible precision, shielding Kalen with her own body when chunks of debris rained down. Kalen, his senses amplified by the KRLL integration, could hear the distant, steady beat of rotating rotor blades. Coalition dropships had entered the immediate atmosphere. They were landing troops. They reached the summit terrace, a wide, exposed platform designed to rotate the massive communication dish towards orbital targets. The dish was tilted and scarred from near misses. Before they could reach the control console, a squad of Coalition Marines, recognizable by their heavy armor and the tactical designation patch, Strike Team, Valkyrie, burst through a shattered doorway. They were heavily armed, laser rifles raised, their faces obscured by polarized visors. Leading them was Major Silas Vance, Kalen's former commanding officer, a man Kalen respected deeply, a hardened pragmatist who lived by the Coalition's code. Vance's voice, filtered through his comm system, was cold and professional. "Captain Reese, you are recovered. Disengage immediately from the KRYLL entity. She is a high-value target, designated for termination." Serana immediately pushed Kalen behind a blast-shielded console, spreading her massive crimson wings to fully expose herself, a defiant, armored silhouette against the chaotic sky. "Do not engage the key humans. He is under the protection of the Spire." Serana projected, her voice booming, amplified by her suit system. "Reese, stand down." Vance yelled, his rifle locking onto Serana. "That thing has compromised you. We are here to retrieve you and neutralize the KRYLL command structure." Kalen stepped out from behind the console, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture, placing himself directly between the Marines and the Queen. "Major Vance, stand down." Kalen shouted, projecting the authority of his rank even in his tattered tunic. "The KRYLL are not the enemy. This entire war is based on a mistaken analysis. I have the data. They are refugees facing extinction, and their survival is dependent on me." Vance hesitated, his team holding fire. Kalen was a legend in the Coalition, not prone to emotional breakdowns. But seeing him standing protectively in front of the Vampire Queen, arguing for her survival, was unthinkable. "Captain, that is the Queen of the KRYLL. She extracted you from Delta 7. She has manipulated your mind. This is the height of psion manipulation." Vance's weapon didn't waver. "No manipulation, Major. Integration." Kalen retorted. "I have seen their archives. They are dying, Silas. Their entire purpose on Earth is to find the genetic fix contained in my DNA. If you destroy the Citadel, you destroy the only hope for a peaceful resolution and you commit genocide." As Kalen spoke, two of the Coalition dropships, now overhead, began deploying airborne heavy suppressors, devices designed to cripple KRYLL technology with a wide-spectrum electromagnetic pulse EMP. Serana noticed the suppression deployment instantly. "They are targeting the comm array power flow. We are running out of time." Kalen knew he had to break through Vance's conditioning, and the only way was to give him the unvarnished truth publicly. "Silas, look at the comm dish. You know that hardware. If they hit it with that pulse, this entire Citadel goes offline and the core stabilizing system fails." Kalen pointed to the console. "Give me 3 minutes. I will broadcast the KRYLL's unencrypted history, the truth about the stabilization vector and the Great Blight, to every frequency on Earth. Let the world decide who the true enemy is." Vance was locked in a horrific dilemma. He could follow his orders, terminate the Queen, recover Kalen, and end the Citadel, but Kalen's frantic honesty was piercing his conviction. "My orders are absolute, Captain. If you attempt to broadcast, I must terminate the connection and neutralize the Queen," Vance warned, his comm system crackling with tension. "Then terminate me too, Silas. Because I am the connection. I am the key. If you want to rescue the Captain Reese you knew, you have to let him save the world he betrayed," Kalen shouted. Serana, seeing Vance's indecision, acted decisively. With a sudden burst of speed, she flew low over the console, ripping out a sparking power conduit that was feeding the main comm array dish, creating a temporary disconnect. She then slammed the conduit into the central interface Kalen needed, bypassing the external relays and tying the comm array directly to the immense raw power of the core reactor far below. The dish glowed with dangerous, unstable energy. "The connection is raw. It will overpower your ship's jamming and the suppressors. But it is highly volatile. If you touch that console now, you may be incinerated. Serana warned Kalen, her face grim. Kalen looked at the smoking console, then at Vance and his squad, who were now shifting their attention from Serana to the comm dish. They knew this was the final move. Kalen moved instantly. He dashed to the console, ignoring the scorching heat and the smell of ozone. His amplified Caruelo reflexes guided his hands as he began furiously typing the master override sequence. Vance reacted. Marines, neutralize the console. Do not fire on the captain. Stunners only. The Marine closest to Kalen lowered his laser rifle and drew a large, non-lethal stunner. Serana launched herself at the Marine just as he fired, intercepting the blast with her armor. The force of the stunner, meant to drop a man in full combat gear, sent Serana staggering back with a raw, agonizing cry. Go! She yelled, collapsing momentarily against the railing, her armor smoking. Kalen finished the sequence. He took a deep, steadying breath, preparing for the broadcast, knowing this moment would define him forever. He opened a private, highly encrypted channel to Vance's command unit, ensuring only the Major and his direct superiors heard the full, raw truth first. Then he activated the global unencrypted broadcast. This is Captain Kalen Reese, Coalition ID 709 Alpha 4. My current location is the KRLL Citadel, designated the Crimson Spire. I am under no duress. I am speaking for the future of humanity. He spoke quickly, urgently, describing the KRLL archives, the failed diplomacy, the stabilization vector in his own DNA, and the true non-hostile nature of the KRLL's presence on Earth. He ended with a direct, emotional plea to his former superior. Major Vance, I know your orders. But look around you. You are attacking the only medical center that contains the cure for an entire species. If the KRLL die, this war will consume us all. They need peace, not plasma fire. I am safe and I am the key. Stand down, Silas. For God's sake, stand down. On the platform, Vance watched the light on Kalen's console flare blindingly as the message was sent. He looked at Kalen, his mind reeling from the impossible, undeniable truth he had just heard, and then down at the barely moving form of the wounded Queen Serana. Vance slowly lowered his rifle. Valkyrie team, hold positions, Vance ordered, his voice thick with disbelief and anguish. He keyed his comms. This is Major Vance to Central Command. Confirming Captain Reese's identity and status. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostile engagement pending internal review of transmitted data. I say again, stand down. Silence descended upon the summit, broken only by the crackle of fire and the hum of the unstable comm dish. The coalition dropships overhead, having received the order, slowly ascended, their suppressors powering down. The war, which had arrived at the Citadel with a roar, was suspended by a single, terrifying truth. Serana pushed herself up, staggering towards Kalen. She looked at him, not with the calculating gaze of a queen, but the profound recognition of a partner. You have done it, consort, she murmured, collapsing slightly into his embrace. You have bought us time. Now, we must use it to convince the rest of your fractured world. The sudden silence was heavier than the bombardment. The coalition dropships had retreated into the upper atmosphere, their powerful engines now a distant, whining memory. The comm array platform was a scene of devastation. Scorched metal, sparking wires, and the lingering scent of ozone and plasma. Serana leaned heavily against Kalen, her armor cool and slick with the stress of the near-fatal energy burst. The first step is achieved, Serana muttered, her voice weak but firm. She pulled away, forcing herself to stand straight, her queenly demeanor instantly returning despite the smoking scorch mark on her armor. But the truth is wound, Kalen. Your coalition will not heal easily. We must descend. The core reactor's power feed is unstable. They took the emergency access shaft, a steep, reinforced ladder leading down into the deeper, secure levels of the spire. As they climbed, Kalen felt the profound physical presence of the KRYL life force within him. It was not just a biological agent, but a heightened state of awareness, a constant, low-level connection to Serana's thoughts. He could feel her pain, her exhaustion, but also her triumphant relief at the successful broadcast and the securing of the vector. They arrived back at the central chamber, the nerve center, where the three KRLL consuls, Varys, Taith and Lyra were waiting. The consuls were in agitated debate, their mental projections sharp and hostile. Your actions were reckless, Queen Serana. You exposed the vector to the enemy. And you gave the human, the key, access to our most sensitive data and technology. Consul Varys accused, his voice a mental lash. Serana stood before the council, positioning Kalen just behind her, her stance radiating absolute authority. The coalition struck the spire, consuls. Our options were submission, destruction, or preemptive revelation. I chose the latter. The war has stopped. That is a victory you cannot deny. A temporary halt, my queen, Consul Lyra, the female consul with a face carved from pale marble, countered cautiously. The human broadcast was an admission of our fragility. They will now view us as desperate prey, not formidable enemies. And this consort, she projected the title with obvious distaste, is now privy to our vulnerabilities. Serana turned her head slightly, making eye contact with Kaelin. He knew she wasn't asking for help, but asserting their partnership. Kaelin stepped forward, addressing the consuls directly, not with military jargon, but with the logical structure he had absorbed from the KRLL data streams. The information provided was selective, consuls. I did not reveal your deeper technological capabilities, nor the exact location of the breeding nurseries. I gave them only the truth required for a ceasefire. Furthermore, I am the living guarantee of the stabilization vector. Harm me, alienate me, and you risk losing the only cure. The Queen has bound me to this spire, my fate is intertwined with yours. Treat me as the asset I am. The sheer audacity of the humans speaking in defense of their queen and the spire silenced the consuls momentarily. They had expected fear or deference. They received calculated challenge. Serana allowed the silence to hold, then delivered the final, undeniable command. Consort Kaelin Reese has been integrated. His status is sealed. From this moment, he is the primary authority on all matters concerning human diplomacy and technology integration. Your opposition is noted, consuls, but your duty is to the KRLL future. Now we prepare for the inevitable human response. The consuls bowed stiffly and retreated, their collective mental projections still simmering with resentment. Later, in Kaelin's chamber, Serana was overseeing the application of a regenerative gel to the damaged sections of her armor. The atmosphere was intimate, yet entirely focused on strategy. Varys and Lyra will attempt to undermine you, Serana warned, her violet eyes meeting his in the mirrored surface of the regeneration station. They fear what they do not control, and you are beyond their control. I am also their only hope, Kaelin countered, watching her through the reflection. The proximity was constant now, an unnerving, intoxicating reality. The coalition will respond in one of two ways. Either they demand my return as a hostage and refuse to believe the KRYLL data, or they attempt to assassinate me to prevent the integration from becoming a permanent political threat. Serana nodded, applying the shimmering gel carefully to her shoulder plate. The first response is likely from your military command, General Torvin. The second is from the shadowy elements in your government who desire absolute control. We must anticipate both. She turned to face him fully, the scent of the healing gel mixing with the lingering ozone of the battlefield. The greatest threat, Kaelin, is your own continued existence as a human male. The biological drive is now absolute, but the political reality requires unity. I need your cooperation now more than ever, not merely for reproduction, but to present an undivided front to the coalition. She stepped close, her height and presence dominating the chamber, yet her eyes held a vulnerable demand. We are bound, Kaelin. Your genetic material is now replicating within me. I feel the shift in my own biology, the surge of stability. This is irreversible. We are not just allies, we are partners in this future. The people of Earth will only accept the truce if they believe you are a willing consort, not a kidnapped soldier. Kaelin knew what she was asking. It was the next terrifying step in their forced proximity, a public, political, and personal affirmation of their bond. He reached out and gently touched the smooth curve of her horn. I broadcasted the truth, Serana. I stood against my own command and risked my life for your people's future. My will is yours, but my loyalty is to the truth, and right now, the truth is KRYL survival, Kaelin stated. I will play the consort. I will stand by your side. But you must give me the authority to genuinely negotiate with Torvin, not just parrot your demands. Serana's expression was intense. She took his hand, her armored fingers interlocking with his. You have it, Kaelin Reese. You are the bridge. Now we show your world what a shared future looks like. Just as their hands connected, the communication panel chimed urgently. The hologram of the Central Command logo, General Torvin's grim face, materialized in the center of the chamber. Captain Reese. Torvin's voice was strained, thick with barely contained rage and confusion. You have committed an act of treason. We received your fraudulent broadcast. You have 1 hour to surrender yourself and the KRLL Queen to coalition custody, or we initiate Phase 3, the total orbital neutralization of the Citadel. Respond now. The challenge was laid bare. Kaelin looked at Serana, the fate of two worlds resting on the words they spoke next. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise of partnership, and stepped forward to face his former commander. Kaelin squeezed Serana's hand one last time, a silent anchor in the whirlwind of geopolitical conflict, and stepped fully into the visual range of the holographic panel. General Torvin's face, etched with decades of military doctrine and now rigid with betrayed fury, filled the chamber. He was flanked by the stern, colorless faces of the Coalition High Council. General Torvin, Kalen began, his voice calm and steady, projecting the authority of the KRLL consort, not the captured captain. I'm not surrendering. You have my broadcast. You know the truth of the KRYLL situation, and you know my genetic reality. I advise you to rescind Phase 3 immediately. Torvin's eyes narrowed, his gaze attempting to burn through the holographic barrier. Reese, you are a security risk and a traitor. Your broadcast is a delusion, the result of KRLL psion manipulation designed to halt our necessary counterstrike. You will be recovered, debriefed, and treated. The queen of the KRLL will be neutralized, and the spire will be reduced to a crater. I give you 30 minutes before the orbital bombardment recommences. Serana moved to stand beside Kalen, her posture regal and challenging, the scorch marks on her armor only emphasizing her survival. Torvin, Serana addressed the general directly, her voice amplified and resonant, designed to carry weight and command attention. Your threat is based on the assumption of our weakness. The KRYL civilization is dying, but our retaliatory technology is not defunct. You have tracked the core spire, but you have failed to track the secondary deterrent grid, a network of orbital platforms designed to protect our final habitat. She reached out and tapped a sequence on the comms panel. Instantly, a new projection materialized over the Citadel schematics, 3 faint triangular nodes glowing menacingly in high orbit above Earth. These nodes are dormant, General, Serana continued, her voice cold and absolute. But they are linked directly to the Citadel's core and, critically, to the unique biological signature of the stabilization vector, Kalen Reese. If this spire is destroyed, the network will interpret my death and, more importantly, the death of the consort as an act of absolute aggression. The platforms will auto-activate, targeting your primary planetary defenses and every major coalition city simultaneously. The council members behind Torvin shifted nervously. The threat was enormous, and KRYL technology was historically underestimated. You are bluffing, KRYL. Torvin roared, his composure fracturing. Your people don't have the resources for such a planetary threat. We have just enough resources for retaliation, General, Kalen interjected, his gaze holding Torvin's. We are not seeking to conquer but to survive. My broadcast was genuine. The vector is within me, and it is the key to a future where KRYL stability is exchanged for KRYL technology that can protect Earth from external threats your coalition can't even imagine. If you attack, you sacrifice the vector, you initiate a global catastrophe, and you destroy Earth's chance at reaching galactic-level security. He took a slow step closer to the panel, his voice dropping to a persuasive, urgent plea. Silas, the war is over because the reason for the war, the fear of a hostile invasion, was a lie. The KRYL need a cure. Humanity needs a technological leap. I am the physical link to both. You cannot afford to lose me. Kalen paused, letting the magnitude of the threat and the opportunity sink in. I'm giving you an off-ramp, General. Not a surrender. I demand an immediate, verifiable planetary ceasefire and the initiation of a diplomatic summit. You will send an unarmed delegation to a neutral ground for verifiable data exchange and a physical examination of the KRYL biological status. Torvin stared at the projected deterrent nodes, then at Kalen and finally at Serana, who met his furious gaze without flinching. The general, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting humanity, was trapped. If Kalen was right, attacking meant planetary suicide. If Kalen was lying, attacking meant ending the only source of the cure. The risk of error was absolute. After a tense, agonizing silence, Torvin's shoulders slumped slightly. He turned to his council, their faces grimly confirming the tactical assessment. Reese, Torvin said, his voice now flat, defeated. You've backed us into an impossible corner. No, General, Kalen corrected him softly. I've given you a choice for peace. The KRYL have the cure. Humanity holds the peace treaty. You simply have to sign it. Torvin turned back to the screen, his gaze lingering on Serana, who was radiating triumph. The orbital strike is suspended, effective immediately. We will initiate a ceasefire within the next 2 hours. We will meet your demands for a neutral ground summit. But if we find any evidence that the KRYL deterrent grid is a fabrication, or if Kalen Reese has been harmed, the war will resume with absolute finality. The connection ended abruptly. Kalen let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The adrenaline left him, replaced by profound exhaustion. He turned to Serana. We did it, he whispered, the words barely audible. Serana stepped forward, placing her hands on his shoulders. Her touch was possessive, powerful, and now openly affectionate. You leveraged your human ties and my alien threats with perfect precision, consort. You risked everything and achieved the impossible. The coalition is reeling, but they are still a viable enemy. Now, we must prepare for the second negotiation, the one that will happen here inside the spire. The consuls, Kalen realized, already anticipating the internal struggle. Precisely, Serana confirmed. They accepted the ceasefire under duress. Now they will demand proof of the Vector's success, and they will demand the immediate absolute blood tie that binds you to the KRYL sovereignty. They want a public, formal confirmation of your status. She leaned in, her eyes shining with commitment. The truce is bought with your compliance, Kalen. The consuls require a formal, political display of the consort's commitment before they fully trust the human. They want the truth of the Queen's bond to be undeniable. The air in the central chamber was thick with expectation and simmering resentment. The KRL consuls, Varys, Taith, and Lyra, stood in a tight semicircle around a wide, circular dais, their pale gold and violet eyes fixed entirely on Kalen. Below the platform, hundreds of high-ranking KRL military and science personnel gathered, a silent, armored audience witnessing the most crucial political event in KRL history, the formal binding of the Queen and the key. Kalen stood beside Serana, dressed in a newly tailored KRL garment, a form-fitting, obsidian tunic embroidered with fine silver threads that matched the Queen's own ceremonial robes. He felt every gaze, every flicker of judgment and hope projected mentally towards him. His wrist comm remained securely under his cuff, a constant reminder of his human past and his dangerous, new present. Serana stepped onto the dais first, her movement fluid, every inch the sovereign. She was not in armor, but wore a single flowing gown of deep crimson that seemed to capture and intensify the citadel's light. Her immense wings were unsheathed, rising like a crown behind her, powerful symbols of her authority. Consul Varys, acting as the high priest of the rite, initiated the ceremony. His voice, usually a cold mental projection, was delivered audibly, a guttural ancient chant in the KRYL language that resonated deep within the chamber. The KRYL have endured the blight. The KRYL have searched the void. The KRYL have found the vector to life, secured in the blood of the other. Does the sovereign, Queen Serana, accept this foreign life as the absolute pillar of the new KRYL stability? Serana placed her hand over her heart, where the sigil pulsed visibly beneath her skin. I accept the vector. I accept the stability. I bind my future to the life force of this consort. Kalen knew this was his moment to cement his authority, not just his subservience. He moved to the center of the dais as Varys beckoned him forward. Human Kalen Reese, you are the key, the catalyst of our future. You have been integrated by the Queen's own life. We require your undivided vow, a bond that transcends your former loyalties. Do you pledge your mind, your loyalty, and your seed to the absolute survival of the KRYL, and to the defense of the sovereign? Kalen looked out at the sea of alien faces, then into the fierce, expectant eyes of Serana. He could feel the collective mental pressure, the distrust of the consuls, the hope of the populace. His answer had to be absolute. I pledge my life to the survival of the KRYL people, as they are the survival of my own genetic line, Kalen stated, his voice ringing with conviction. My loyalty is to peace and truth, which now reside within the spire. I stand as the consort and the bridge, ready to defend the sovereign and this citadel against any force that seeks to end the future we have forged. He did not deny his human roots, but reframed his loyalty to align with the KRYL's ultimate goal, survival. Varys' gold eyes flashed with sudden approval. He then lifted a single, ornate, crystalline blade. The binding must be sealed. The blood tie must be witnessed. The final, ancient part of the ceremony required a physical merger. Serana stepped forward, holding her left forearm out, where the skin was pure silver, unmarred by armor. Varys made a clean, shallow incision. A thin, luminous stream of deep crimson KRL blood welled up. Varys then turned to Kalen, his face impassive. The bond must flow both ways. The human must contribute his essence to the lifeline. Kalen offered his own left forearm. The feeling of the crystalline blade cutting his skin was sharp and cold. His blood, thick, deep red, and thoroughly human, immediately contrasted with Serana's luminous flow. Serana then performed the final, most intimate part of the ritual. She brought their wounded forearms together, pressing them firmly, causing their two distinct bloodlines to mix and merge. As their skin touched, Kalen felt a massive, powerful surge of KRL energy flow directly from Serana's bloodstream into his own. It was a searing rush, a final, unencrypted download of her spirit and command authority. The connection was immediate and profound. He saw her pain, her ambition, and the deep, possessive love she was beginning to feel for him, not just as the key, but as the one who defied his own kind for her. And she received his full consciousness, his pragmatism, his soldier's honor, and his now unwavering dedication to the fragile peace they had secured. Varys lifted the now joined arms high for the audience to see. A massive, deafening roar, a combination of auditory sound and powerful mental projection, erupted from the gathered Carwell. Kaelin was no longer merely the key, he was officially the consort of the spire. As the ceremony concluded, Serana turned to Kaelin, her expression a rare mixture of relief and intense satisfaction. She did not speak aloud, but her thought was clear in his mind. It is done, my consort. You are mine and I am yours. The political fight begins now. The coalition's truce held, but General Torvin immediately demanded a virtual conference to set the terms of the diplomatic summit. Kaelin and Serana retreated to the command center, their newly established physical and mental bond acting as a terrifyingly effective partnership. The conference hologram showed Torvin, his face grim, and behind him, a nervous panel of coalition negotiators and bioscientists. The ceasefire remains in place, Carol Queen, Torvin stated, his gaze fixed on Kaelin. But the price of this truce is non-negotiable. We demand the immediate delivery of 5,000 liters of KRLL regenerative fluid and full, unencrypted blueprints of your secondary deterrent grid as collateral. And Captain Reese must report for a full, unmonitored physiological assessment on neutral ground. Kaelin, anticipating the coalition's move to strip the KRLL of their defenses, instantly took charge of the negotiation, his mind now racing at KRLL speed. General, your terms are unacceptable, Kaelin projected, stepping forward. The regenerative fluid is reserved for the nurseries, and the deterrent grid is the only thing protecting the sanctity of the truce. The collateral is me, the living vector. I will submit to your unmonitored assessment only if you agree to two conditions. First, the assessment takes place here inside the spire with coalition scientists brought to us. Second, in exchange for the full genome scan, the coalition must commit to a public, global broadcast acknowledging the KRLL status as a protected, non-hostile civilization seeking aid, not conquest. He looked directly at the coalition scientists. You want the genetic key to galactic survival. You will come here to get it, and you will give us political security in return. Serana, standing just behind him, placed her hand on his back, a gesture of ownership and silent approval. The new consort had learned to play the political game faster than any human expected. The diplomatic transport, a squat, unarmed coalition shuttle painted a sterile, non-threatening white, appeared exactly on schedule, a tiny, defiant speck against the vastness of the obsidian jungle surrounding the Crimson Spire. Serana and Kaelin watched its descent from the main landing platform, the same one where Serana had first arrived with Kaelin in her terrifying embrace. Serana wore a full complement of ceremonial KRLL armor for the arrival, its silver plates gleaming and its huge wings poised, radiating lethal, beautiful power. Her presence was a clear declaration: this is my territory and he is my consort. Kaelin stood a half-step behind her, clad in his black and silver consort robes. He felt the nervous energy of the coalition delegation even before the shuttle's ramp lowered. His mind, still humming with the KRYL psychic link, registered the blend of fear, awe, and burning scientific curiosity emanating from the approaching humans. As the ramp dropped, revealing the 5-person delegation, Kaelin's breath hitched. Standing at the front, clipboard in hand and an expression of grim professional focus, was Dr. Anya Sharma, the coalition's chief bioscientist. A woman Kaelin had shared countless late-night data sessions and dry, witty conversations with during his years of service. Behind her were 2 heavily protected security escorts, who wisely kept their weapons holstered, and 2 junior technicians. Anya's eyes found Kaelin instantly. Her professional composure faltered, replaced by a flicker of pure, agonizing relief mixed with deep confusion. She saw the man she knew, the pragmatic, weary soldier, but standing beside the terrifying winged KRL queen wearing alien silks, he was fundamentally changed. Captain Reese, Anya's voice was strained, amplified by her comm system, carefully avoiding the term consort. Good to see you alive, Dr. Sharma. I trust your journey was uneventful, Kaelin replied, his voice calm, projecting the detachment required of his new role. He deliberately avoided the casual warmth of their past. Serana stepped forward, her armor plates clicking softly, asserting her authority. The greeting is appreciated, Doctor. You are welcome to the Spire, but remember your mandate. You are here solely for the vector assessment. No reconnaissance, no deviation. Any breach of protocol and the truce is terminated. The consort will guide your team. Anya swallowed hard, her gaze darting from Kaelin's alien attire to the scar of the KRL bonding ritual still visible on his forearm. She clearly saw the blood tie. Understood, Your Majesty. Our team is ready to begin the assessment of subject Kalen Reese immediately. The term subject cut Kalen sharply, reminding him exactly how his former allies viewed him, as a genetic specimen, not a person or a diplomat. He is the consort of the spire, Serana corrected, her mental projection lashing out at Anya's mind with barely controlled irritation. You will address him with the appropriate respect. Kalen smoothly intervened, placing a hand on Serana's armored forearm, a subtle, public gesture of his ability to temper her anger. Dr. Sharma, please follow me. The assessment chamber is designed for maximum security and data integrity. Your equipment has already been moved. Kalen led the small delegation through the upper corridors of the Citadel, which had been restored to their serene, pulsing light. As they moved, Anya fell back slightly, managing to whisper under the hum of the internal lighting, keeping her voice low enough that Serana, walking ahead, could not possibly hear, or so she thought. Kalen, are you truly all right? We saw the broadcast, but Central Command believes you're being controlled by a psychosymbiotic bond. Give me a sign. Blink twice if you're under duress. Kalen continued walking, his expression blank. He knew Serana was monitoring this exchange via their psychic link, feeling every anxious thought from the human scientist. She probes your weakness, consort. Be firm. Your silence is required, Serana's thought pulsed clearly in his mind. Kalen maintained his pace but glanced back at Anya. Dr. Sharma, my status is irrelevant to the scientific facts. Focus on the vector. The fate of two races depends on your objectivity, not my personal comfort. Anya looked heartbroken, interpreting his cold distance as evidence of KRLL conditioning. She pressed him again. Your former squad, Valkyrie, they are demanding answers. They believe you were forced into that ceremony. Did the Queen initiate the integration against your will? Before Kalen could formulate a neutral, KRLL-approved response, Serana stopped at a heavy portal leading to the lower science levels. She turned, her violet gaze searing into Anya's. The consort is bound by choice and necessity, Doctor, Serana stated, her mental voice now amplified, a booming roar that struck Anya with the force of physical wind. The blood tie is absolute. It is a unity of purpose for survival. Do not insult the consort's honor by suggesting he is a mindless puppet. He acted to save his world from the folly of his leaders. Now proceed with the work you were sent to do or leave. Anya staggered slightly, visibly shaken by the mental attack, and wisely remained silent. The assessment chamber was a sterile, circular room deep within the Citadel's core structure, far from the light and chaos of the surface. A sophisticated KRLL diagnostic dais dominated the center. For the next 8 hours, Kalen endured the unmonitored assessment. He lay on the KRL dais as Anya, her hands shaking slightly, affixed highly advanced coalition biometric sensors to his body. She and her team worked methodically, collecting blood, tissue, and neural scans, their silence broken only by the clinical hum of the equipment. Throughout the lengthy process, Serana remained in the room watching from a distance. Her presence was a suffocating layer of protection and possessiveness. Anya eventually removed the final sensor, her face pale as she reviewed the data streaming onto her secure tablet. The readings were irrefutable. The integration is genuine, Anya whispered, her scientific objectivity overriding her fear. The unique stabilization vector is present in his somatic cells, and, your genetic material, Your Majesty, is fully integrated into his cellular structure. This isn't manipulation, it's a profound, biological merger. He is literally the bridge. Anya looked up at Kalen, her eyes wide with a new, terrified understanding. You weren't lying, Kalen. This is real. You are the future of the KRL. Kalen sat up, feeling the immense release of tension from Serana's mind as the data confirmed their story. Now, Doctor, you have your science. Fulfill your side of the truce. Broadcast the truth. Announce the KRYLL as a protected species. Anya nodded slowly, but her gaze lingered on Kalen, not the Queen. I will file the report with maximum security encryption. But Kalen, the Coalition won't stop. They may not want to kill the KRYLL anymore, but they will desperately want to recover you. You are the most valuable asset in the galaxy. General Torvin is mobilizing a covert recovery operation even as we speak. They will try to deintegrate you. The warning was raw, honest, and delivered with genuine concern. It was a final, terrible act of loyalty from his old world. As Anya turned to leave, Serana finally approached Kalen, placing her hands on his cheeks, her touch possessive and protective. The Coalition will not take you, my consort, Serana vowed, her mental voice a low, fierce growl. The physical boundary of the spire is nothing compared to the bond we share. Your old friends now know your value, which only intensifies the danger. We must secure our future before they try to snatch it away. The Coalition delegation departed immediately, taking their definitive, terrifying data back to Earth. Kalen was left with the knowledge that his life was about to become the central prize in a diplomatic and military tug-of-war. The truce was merely a pause. The departure of the coalition shuttle left a void of silence, which was quickly filled by the aggressive mental urgency radiating from Queen Serana. Dr. Sharma's parting warning, that Torvin would attempt recovery and deintegration, had confirmed Serana's deepest fears. The vector was now validated, and therefore Kalen's physical safety was the most critical strategic point in the entire conflict. Serana immediately bypassed the council, projecting a command directly to the Citadel's core engineers. Activate Nursery Protocol Gamma 9. Divert $70% of external shield power to the life support systems of the consort's chamber and the reproductive core. Seal all non-essential portals. She grabbed Kalen's arm, her armored fingers digging slightly into his flesh. Her gaze was intense, her violet eyes burning with a fierce, possessive need. Anya Sharma gave us the only truth your military respects. You are a prize to be recovered, Serana stated, pulling him towards the private transit portal reserved for the Queen's use. The ceasefire is a deception to buy Torvin time. I will not lose the salvation of my race to human stealth tactics. The next phase of your commitment begins now. Kalen felt the surge of her fear and her biological imperative, a terrifying blend of political strategy and raw instinct. Where are we going, Serana? The diplomatic summit is still planned. The summit can wait. Survival cannot, she retorted. We are going to the reproductive core, the deepest section of the nurseries. It is the only area impervious to infiltration, shielded by layers of dark matter composite plating. You will remain there, under constant vigilance, until the threat is neutralized. The portal flashed open, revealing a short, dark tunnel. They stepped through, and the air immediately became thick and humid, filled with the soft, high-pitched thrumming of countless life support systems. They were in the heart of the KRYLL future. The reproductive core was a vast, subterranean cavern, dimly lit by soft, bioluminescent mosses and warmed by geothermal energy. The center of the cavern housed hundreds of transparent, glowing incubation tanks, the nurseries. This was where the remaining KRYLL children and embryos were housed, desperately kept alive by technology while the KRYLL genome stabilized. It was a place of fragile hope and immense vulnerability. No KRYLL soldiers or consuls were present, only specialized biodrones, slender, silent automatons designed for delicate biological work, moved between the tanks. Serana led Kalen to a private, circular platform raised above the nurseries. A massive, luxurious bed, similar to the one in his chamber, dominated the space, but this platform was also equipped with highly sophisticated, subtle life monitoring devices. You are protected here, consort. This chamber is directly linked to my neural network and the Spire's central defense. I will not leave you unguarded, Serana vowed. She turned to face him, her combat armor retracting seamlessly into her clothing, leaving her in the crimson robe of the consort ceremony. The shift in vulnerability was immediate and arresting. The most significant threat to the vector is not military, Kalen. It is time, Serana explained, her voice low and intimate. The stabilization of the KRYLL genome requires a consistent, powerful source of the vector. The current protocol mandates the immediate acceleration of the mating cycle to maximize conception attempts before Torvin can mount his attack. Kalen's breath caught in his throat. He understood the urgency, but the cold, clinical reality of his role as a biological resource never failed to shock him. You're accelerating the timeline because of Torvin. I am accelerating the timeline because your genetic material is currently housed within a fragile human body, susceptible to abduction, injury, or assassination, Serana corrected, stepping closer until the scent of ozone and night-blooming flowers filled his senses. The only way to ensure the continuity of the vector is to secure it within the next generation of KRYLL. You are the source, consort. I am the vessel. And we have no time for the lengthy courtship rituals of either your species or mine. She reached out and placed her hand flat against his chest, right over his pounding heart. Her violet eyes, now softer, almost pleading, looked deep into his. I may be the queen, Kalen, but I am also the last reproductive female of a dying race. My biological imperative to secure our future is overwhelming. My feelings for you, born of shared crisis and mental fusion, are complicated, but they are intensely possessive. Understand this, I do not merely desire the vector, I desire the consort. The honesty, stripped bare of all political calculation, was a new, frightening element in their relationship. He was no longer just the key, he was the object of the KRYLL Queen's singular focus and desire. Kalen felt the intense pull of their psychic bond, the fusion of his honor and her desperation. He reached up, placing his hand over hers. My loyalty is to the future we secured, Serana, Kalen replied, his voice rough. If this is the cost of peace, if this is what saves those children in the tanks, then let's secure the vector. Serana's relief was immediate, a powerful wave of mental energy washing over him. She didn't smile, but her eyes darkened with purpose. The protocols are highly efficient, she murmured, her voice losing its clinical edge. The KRYLL integration fluid, which you received during the commitment, has already prepared your system, enhancing your natural resilience and reproductive viability. The process will be guided by the Spire's central system to ensure success. She raised her hand to the ceiling. Instantly, the lights dimmed further, and the gentle, sensual KRYLL music filtered into the chamber. The biodrones below continued their methodical work, oblivious to the drama unfolding above them. Serana stepped back, then swiftly unclasped the high collar of her crimson robe. It slid silently to the floor, revealing the pale, almost luminous skin beneath, crisscrossed with delicate, flowing lines of silver where her nervous system was directly integrated with her life support suit, a terrifying, beautiful blend of biology and technology. Kalen watched her, the last vestiges of his coalition identity dissolving into the primal, powerful reality of his new role. He was not a soldier preparing for a mission. He was the consort, preparing to fulfill his destiny as the link between two worlds. As Serana moved towards him on the platform, her wings shifting softly, Kalen felt the sheer magnitude of the moment. The desperate gamble of a dying race, the profound biological bond, and the terrifying, immediate future they were about to create, deep within the heart of the KRLL Citadel. The chamber lights were the color of deep twilight, casting the entire platform in hues of indigo and soft red. The only movement below was the silent, methodical work of the biodrones tending to the fragile KRYLL future in the incubation tanks. Above them, on the raised platform, the tension was visceral, a profound mix of primal urgency and strategic necessity. Serana stood before Kalen, her body radiating the immense, focused energy of the KRYLL Queen. She reached out, her hands tracing the lines of his face, her touch now devoid of the earlier clinical detachment. She was not just the sovereign, she was the last vessel of her species, and Kalen was the indispensable key. The integration was only the blueprint, consort, Serana murmured, her voice a deep, vibrating hum that echoed within his mind as much as in the chamber. This process is the act of creation. The KRYLL system is designed for efficiency and strength. The bond will not only secure the vector but will fuse our central nervous systems, maximizing the success rate and ensuring the offspring inherit the highest possible resilience. Kalen felt the sheer magnitude of the moment. He was here not just for biological function, but for a profound, terrifying partnership. He reached out, his human touch tentative, resting his hands on her waist, feeling the smooth, cool skin beneath his fingers. I understand the necessity, Serana, Kalen replied, his soldier's mind clinging to the objective. We secure the vector. We survive Torvin. She gave a small, almost sorrowful shake of her head. You still view this as a mission. I view it as the final, desperate chance for life. Let go of the soldier, Kalen. Embrace the consort. With a movement of stunning grace, Serana lowered herself onto the plush surface of the bed, drawing him with her. The surrounding environment reacted instantly. The soft music intensified and a warm, low light focused on the platform, isolating them in a bubble of intimate power. As their bodies met, the psychic link that had been a gentle hum exploded into a roaring torrent. It was unlike any human intimacy, a massive, immediate neural merge. Kalen was instantly flooded with her consciousness, the cold logic of her command, the deep, sorrowful memory of her lost ancestors, and the raw, overwhelming biological hunger to complete the cycle and save her people. In turn, Serana absorbed Kalen's deep-seated honor, his disciplined strength, and the surprising, tender vulnerability he kept hidden beneath his captain's facade. The initial shock of the merge was overwhelming, driving out all thought, leaving only the primal, unified need of two beings bound by fate and biology. The KRYLL reproductive process was guided by the Spire's highly advanced biosystem. Specialized chemical releases, controlled by Serana's own nervous system, flooded Kalen's body, enhancing his vitality and responsiveness far beyond human capacity. The process was intense, powerful, and driven by the deep, compelling knowledge that every action was a strike against extinction, a victory over the forces poised to destroy them. As the moments stretched, the clinical focus dissolved, replaced by a fierce, possessive passion unique to their forced bond. Serana's initial strategic desire melted into genuine, profound connection. She wasn't just taking the vector, she was forging an unshakable bond with the man who had defied his entire world for her. She ceased being the terrifying queen and became the desperate, passionate anchor of their future. Kalen felt the layers of his human identity peeling away. The fear of being a tool was replaced by the acceptance of being a partner. The constant physical and mental stress of the last few days, the terror of the abduction, the chaos of the bombardment, the political maneuvering, all channeled into this singular desperate act of creation. He found himself responding to her not with reluctance, but with a fierce, protective desire to fulfill their purpose, driven by the amplified, unified flow of KRLL energy. The climax of the union was a blinding flash of psychic light. Kalen felt the profound physical sense of the stabilization vector, his own unique genetic code, being successfully and permanently anchored within the KRLL Queen's reproductive core. The shared mind screamed in biological triumph. Serana collapsed against him, her breath coming in rapid, shallow gasps, her mental presence slowly receding from the full merge, leaving only the profound, constant hum of the shared bond. For a long moment, they lay together in the quiet warmth of the nursery core, surrounded by the fragile evidence of the life they were fighting to save. Below them, the biodrones continued their vigil. Serana stirred first, lifting her head to look at Kalen. Her violet eyes, now softened by exhaustion, held an expression Kalen had never expected to see: vulnerability. "It is secured, consort," she murmured, her thought overlapping with her spoken words. "The vector is mine. The future is ours." She placed a hand on his stomach, then lifted it to cup the side of his head. "The depth of the bond is stronger than I anticipated. I feel your conviction, your past loyalties. They are complex, but they are honest. Know this, Kalen. The children we create will be bound to both worlds. They will be the ultimate ambassadors of peace." Kalen felt a new protective instinct surge through him. Not the soldier's need to defend the innocent, but the father's need to protect his family and his future. "Torvin will still try to get me back," Kalen stated, his voice now imbued with a steady, new resolve. "He won't want KRYL human children, he'll see them as the ultimate threat. We need to go on the offensive. Use the vector's security as a diplomatic weapon." Serana nodded, her eyes flashing with renewed strategic fire. "We have proof of conception. We will send the coalition a limited, undeniable biological scan confirming the hybrid vector is established. That will panic them, forcing them to choose between peace and genocide." She rose, pulling Kalen with her. The intense physical intimacy was immediately replaced by their political partnership. "Now, consort, we send the message. We force Torvin's hand. The final confrontation will not be fought with plasma rifles, but with the terrifying reality of our new progeny." The central command chamber of the Crimson Spire was no longer a negotiation room, it was a broadcasting studio. The main console, still showing scorch marks from the recent attack, was now tied directly to the Citadel's bioscience core. Serana stood beside Kalen, her armor fully restored, her expression a study in calculated menace. Her wings were spread slightly, catching the ambient light, framing Kalen as the irreplaceable prize. "The coalition respects only hard data and absolute power, consort," Serana mentally projected to Kalen, the shared thought clear and cold. "We have given them the truce. Now we give them the irrefutable consequence of breaking it." Kalen nodded, his gaze steady on the communications panel. He was fully aware of the magnitude of the lie they were about to sell, a lie of peace built on the undeniable truth of a biological merger. Serana initiated a Priority 1 broadcast, a signal designed to override all coalition jamming and reach General Torvin's secure command center, along with all major global media outlets. Torvin's face immediately materialized in the hologram, taut with fury and exhaustion. Behind him, the Coalition High Council watched with mounting dread. "Carwell Queen. This is an unauthorized intrusion. The diplomatic channel remains closed until terms are met." Torvin barked, his voice ragged. Serana took the lead, her voice ringing with icy conviction. "General Torvin, your terms are obsolete. The coalition demanded proof of the vector's viability. We now provide it." She tapped the console. The holographic display in the center of the chamber shifted from their faces to a detailed, luminous image of a KRLL ovum, perfectly healthy and robust. Then the image shifted again, displaying the incredibly complex, double helix structure within the ovum's nucleus. The KRLL genome, fractured and unstable, was clearly visible. But interlaced perfectly with the KRLL genes was an unmistakable section of the human stabilization vector, flowing bright gold against the deep purple of the KRLL DNA. It was a complete, stable, biological fusion. Kalen stepped forward, his eyes burning with forced conviction as he addressed the camera directly, knowing his words would echo across the globe. "General Council, I am Captain Kalen Reese, the consort. You are looking at the genetic future of two species. The hybrid vector is secured. The KRLL Queen is pregnant." A stunned, agonizing silence fell over the coalition command center. The image of the stabilized, fused DNA was irrefutable, It was the science Anya Sharma had just confirmed, taken to its logical, terrifying conclusion. Sarana delivered the final, crushing blow. The hybrid vector is now protected by the deepest protocols of the Citadel. Any harm, any breach of the spire, any act of aggression against my person or the consort will be instantly detected by the deterrent grid. The death of the parents will trigger the immediate, automated destruction of your primary defense networks and major population centers. She paused, letting the fear sink in. You are not just threatening the KRYLL. You are threatening the future of the first KRYLL human child. What choice does the coalition make, General? Peace or the genocide of your own offspring? Torvin's control snapped. He slammed his fist down on his console. This is blackmail. A new form of invasion. You forced this hybridization, KRYLL, to shield your military assets. We achieved stability, General, Kalen countered swiftly. The terms are simple: full, absolute diplomatic recognition of the KRYLL as a protected, non-hostile civilization, or you gamble the planet on the chance that I'm lying. Torvin knew he couldn't gamble. The mere possibility of those orbital deterrents being real, and the public uproar over the potential death of a human KRYLL child, would destroy the Coalition High Council immediately. The broadcast is concluded, General, Sarana said, cutting the connection with a swift finality. Your response is expected within the hour. They had won the diplomatic battle, but the victory tasted of ashes. Sarana turned to Kalen, her mental presence heavy with strategic satisfaction. He is cornered. He cannot attack publicly. He cannot risk the hybrid vector's loss. But he cannot allow the consort, the genetic prize, to remain here bonded to you, Kalen thought back, reading the cold fury in Torvin's eyes. Kalen's intuition proved chillingly accurate. Barely 20 minutes after the broadcast, the Citadel's internal security system screamed a localized warning. Intrusion. Sector 7. Covert human infiltration. Torvin didn't wait for the ultimatum. Sarana roared, her hands immediately flying to the controls, diverting power. He's using the chaos of the ceasefire to launch a surgical recovery. He's coming for you, Kalen. It's not a full military strike, Kalen analyzed quickly, adrenaline surging through his enhanced system. It's a small elite team, a black ops unit designed for snatch and grab. He wants me back unharmed to try and reverse the integration, and he wants you alive only as a bargaining chip. Sarana's face was set in fierce determination. Sector 7 leads directly to the nursery core. They know your value and they know where I've hidden you. We must move. I will not allow your former allies to destroy my future. She ripped open a portal. We are going to the Citadel Nexus, the absolute center of the Spire's defense grid. They will have to pass through every remaining layer of our security to reach us. Kalen felt a surge of familiar, lethal focus. His soldier training was kicking in, but this time he was defending the enemy's castle from his former friends. He was fighting for his life, his consort, and his unborn child. Let's move, Queen, Kalen responded, grabbing a discarded KRL energy rifle from the wall mount, an alien weapon now feeling perfectly natural in his hands. They think they know this place from the outside, but they don't know the heart. The portal slammed shut behind them, sealing the central command chamber. Sarana didn't wait. She grabbed Kalen's hand and they raced through the rapidly descending vertical corridors, a blur of crimson and obsidian against the pulsing walls. Kalen's enhanced senses, fused with Sarana's own internal mapping of the Citadel, gave them an impossible tactical advantage. He knew where the Black Ops team was, where they were heading and how they were moving. They are moving through the old maintenance shafts of Sector 7, Sarana projected mentally, her thought sharp as ice. For highly trained soldiers. They are using phase plasma cutters. Fast and silent. They are aiming for the shortest route to the core, through the primary defense grid's hub, Kalen replied, already anticipating the enemy's military logic. They won't use explosives, they need me intact. They're running a precision intercept. They arrived at the defense grid hub, a long narrow walkway suspended over a dizzying drop, lit by emergency red lamps. This was the Citadel's kill zone, usually guarded by automated sentries, but those had been temporarily diverted during the initial coalition attack. We intercept them here, Sarana commanded, drawing a sleek, curved energy blade from her armor. We use the environment. They rely on close-quarters combat. You disable their movement. I neutralize the threats. Kalen braced the KRYL energy rifle against his shoulder. He could hear the faint hiss-click of human boots approaching the junction. The KRYL weapon was heavier than his coalition rifle, but it was capable of cycling through thermal and sonic bursts, perfect for non-lethal disabling. The first member of the Black Ops team rounded the corner. He was encased in stealth black combat armor, his weapon raised, his eyes focused on the path ahead. Kalen recognized the fluid, efficient movement instantly, Sergeant Valerius Val Kane, Kalen's longtime second-in-command and the man who taught him how to shoot. Val, Kalen whispered, the name a painful twist of betrayal and recognition. Serana didn't hesitate. Neutralize the threat, consort. He will not stop. Kalen fired. He aimed low, deliberately using a sonic disruptor burst that struck Kane's legs. The blast wasn't designed to kill, but to shock the central nervous system. Kane screamed, dropping his weapon and collapsing to the ground, his body convulsing momentarily. The 3 remaining soldiers immediately scattered, utilizing the tight corridor for cover. Kane down. It's Reese. He's armed with a KRLL weapon. Abort plan, engage direct recovery. A sharp voice barked over the enemy team's encrypted comms. The leader of the squad, a woman whose movements were the fastest Kalen had ever seen, lunged towards Kane, attempting to drag him to safety. Serana launched herself forward, her wings acting as a terrifying shield. She didn't use the blade, instead she unleashed a focused psionic pulse, a powerful blast of mental energy that hit the squad leader head-on. The leader crumpled silently, unconscious before she hit the metal grating. 2 threats neutralized. Serana projected triumphantly. Kalen and Serana advanced, weaving past the disabled enemy soldiers. The last 2 operatives, realizing they were facing a force that knew their every move, broke rank and retreated into a labyrinth of steam pipes and vents. They're heading for the outer shields. They're abandoning the recovery and switching to extermination. Torvin's contingency. Kalen realized, horrified. If they reached the shield generators they would detonate them, taking Kalen, Serana, and the entire hybrid vector with them. We cannot allow them to reach the generators. Serana cried, her wings beating hard as she flew ahead, creating a draft that pulled Kalen along the walkway. They chased the remaining soldiers through narrow, scorching hot maintenance tunnels. The combined mental power of Kalen's knowledge of coalition tactics and Serana's pure KRLL speed made them an unstoppable pursuit unit. Kalen rounded a corner, his KRLL rifle ready. The remaining 2 soldiers had split up. One, a heavy weapons specialist, was attempting to prime a seismic charge on the main power junction. Stop, Marcus. It's me. You detonate that and you kill the cure. Kalen shouted, aiming his weapon. Marcus looked up, his face twisted with fanaticism. The general says the cure is a lie, Captain. The only truth is human dominance. Die for the coalition, Reese. He lunged toward the detonator switch. Kalen fired a thermal burst. It was a perfect, calibrated shot that melted the detonator in Marcus's hand, instantly fusing the mechanism before he could complete the circuit. Marcus screamed, clutching his smoking, useless hand. The last operative, however, was already at the main shield generator controls. She was a demolitions expert and she didn't use a detonator. She was using a coded override key to initiate a shield collapse. Serana arrived first, screaming a fierce, guttural cry that was part auditory, part mental. She slammed into the operative just as the woman's finger touched the final key. The contact was violent. The human's combat knife sliced a shallow but deep gash across Serana's delicate wing membrane. Serana staggered, her thought immediately flashing to Kalen. The shield, compromised. It's failing. Stop the collapse. Kalen didn't hesitate. He tossed his rifle, running the last few meters to the console. The KRLL script was flashing red, cascading into an irreversible meltdown sequence. He slapped his hand onto the console and, using the deep, innate understanding gained from his integration, plunged his mind into the machine's programming. He didn't type, he willed the system to obey. He forced the KRYLL core logic to override the human command, his mind wrestling with the electronic sabotage. The exertion was immense, draining the energy the KRYLL integration had given him, making his nose bleed with the mental strain. Finally, with a loud, metallic clang, the red warning lights shut off, replaced by the steady, green hum of stabilization. The shield collapse was averted. Kalen leaned against the console, sweat dripping from his face, completely exhausted. Serana, bleeding freely from her wing, slowly made her way to him, her face etched with pain and immense relief. She wrapped her good arm around his waist, pulling him close. "You saved us, consort," she murmured, the thought echoing warmly in his mind. "Your human strength mixed with KRYL will. You are unparalleled." Kalen looked over her shoulder at the unconscious form of Sergeant Val Kane, his best friend. The Black Ops team was neutralized, but the victory felt terrible. "We need to broadcast the capture immediately," Kalen said, his voice raw. "Show Torvin his operation failed. Show him his best men are now our prisoners. The final move is political, not military." The defense grid hub had been secured. The captured Black Ops team, disarmed and tightly bound by KRYL energy restraints, was moved to a high-security holding cell. Kalen had insisted that the KROL medics treat Val Kane's sonic burns and the squad leader's psionic shock immediately, a desperate, final act of loyalty to his former comrades. Kalen and Serana returned to the command chamber, but there was no time for rest. The captured team was the ultimate leverage and they had to use it before General Torvin could spin the narrative. Kalen entered the small, isolated interrogation room, built adjacent to the holding cells. Serana remained just outside, her presence a silent, armored guardian, projecting immense support and quiet expectation. Sergeant Val Kane was seated alone in the room, his dark combat armor removed, leaving him in a thin coalition undersuit. His eyes, though still stinging from the sonic blast, were locked on Kalen, a look of deep, burning betrayal. Kalen, Val rasped, the name laced with bitterness. You sold out. To a goddamn vampire. You know what that thing is going to do to you? What it's already done. Kalen pulled up a stool, sitting opposite his friend. The KRYLL energy rifle lay casually on the table, a silent threat. I'm not sold out, Val. I'm standing for the truth. You saw the data, Anya's reports are on every coalition server. The KRYLL are dying and I am the cure. The cure is a trick, a means to subdue us. Val spat, trying to struggle against the restraints. General Torvin sent us here to save you, Kalen. To deintegrate you before you become some genetic incubator for those winged freaks. Kalen leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Torvin sent you here with demolition charges, Val. You were ordered to detonate the shield generators and turn the spire into plasma, killing me, the Queen, and the only hope for a peaceful resolution. You weren't on a rescue mission. You were on a genocide mission. Val's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock piercing his rigid conviction. He was a soldier, not a murderer. That's a lie. We were told the charges were for self-defense, for a diversion. Ask Marcus, Kalen challenged. He was prepping the full seismic charge, Val. Not a diversion. Torvin panicked when we showed him the hybrid vector. He couldn't risk the political fallout of a KRYLL human child existing, so he sent you to erase the evidence. Kalen pushed a single small data pad across the table. It displayed the schematics of the detonation sequence Val's team was running. A full shield collapse, not a localized explosion. I know how your mind works, Val. I know your loyalty, Kalen continued, his voice softening with painful sincerity. But Torvin is lying to you. He used your honor to execute his fear. Now, you have one chance to save the lives of those innocent soldiers and the countless lives on Earth. Kalen reached out and gently rested his hand on Val's shoulder. The contact sent a powerful wave of Kalen's integrated KRLL thoughts, the absolute, undeniable truth of Serana's desperation and the KRLL's purity of purpose, directly into Val's mind. It was a mental fusion, stripped of Serana's authority, delivered with Kalen's lifelong friendship. Val's eyes clenched shut, his body shaking as he fought the overwhelming influx of alien consciousness and emotional truth. When he opened his eyes, the betrayal was still there, but it was mixed with terrible, dawning comprehension. They lied, Val whispered, the conviction broken. They lied about the blight, they lied about the invasion, and they lied about the mission. Yes, Kalen confirmed softly. Now, I need you to confirm that lie to General Torvin. You are the final piece of leverage. Kalen walked out and signaled Serana. She immediately initiated a final, definitive live global broadcast, placing Kalen and the now visibly broken Val Kane directly in the frame. General Torvin and the High Council were already waiting, their faces pale with rage and mounting dread. General Torvin, Kalen's voice cut through the tension. Your covert recovery operation has failed. Your best men are now in KRYLL custody. You have lost the war, Silas. Not on the battlefield but in the realm of morality. Serana stepped forward, placing a hand on Kalen's shoulder, a clear sign of their unified front. The consort has confirmed your betrayal. Your attempt to commit genocide under the guise of a rescue operation is now on record, confirmed by your own trusted major and his team. This information will be released globally in 30 seconds if you do not comply. She then delivered the final, non-negotiable ultimatum. The cost of your failure, General, is the peace treaty. We demand the immediate, absolute withdrawal of all coalition forces from the Red Zone, the public announcement of the KRYLL's protected status, and the immediate dispatch of a formal diplomatic ambassador, not a military man, to the spire. Torvin's gaze darted from Kalen's calm, resolute face to Val Kane's shamed, broken expression. He knew the political death sentence the public exposure of his treachery would bring. He had no leverage left. Reese, Torvin snarled, his voice a low growl of defeat. You have destroyed everything you were sworn to protect. No, General, Kalen corrected, staring straight into the camera. I preserved the future. You were protecting a memory. We preserved life. With a heavy sigh of absolute defeat, General Torvin nodded to his staff. Prepare the peace protocol. Initiate the global truth broadcast, confirming the KRYL status as a non-hostile civilization seeking aid. The holographic display changed one last time, dissolving the image of Torvin and the Council, replaced by the scrolling text of the first interspecies peace accord, ready for signature. Serana smiled, a fierce, terrifying flash of triumph. She looked at Kalen, her mental voice ringing with pride. The war is ended, my consort. You brought the universe to its knees with a single genetic truth. The world was safe, the truce was signed, and Kalen Reese, the soldier, had become the consort, bound forever to the vampire queen, destined to raise a new race of diplomatic hybrids in the heart of the Crimson Spire. 2 Earth years later. Kalen stood on the highest observation deck of the Crimson Spire. The war-scarred landscape below was slowly being replaced by the gentle, silver-leafed flora of KRYL terraforming efforts, funded by the new interspecies technology exchange. Kalen wore the consort's robes with comfortable authority. He had not returned to Earth, choosing instead to serve as the permanent, undeniable link between the two worlds. He maintained the peace through constant, meticulous diplomatic conferences, flanked always by Serana. Val Kane and the Black Ops team were granted amnesty after testifying against Torvin's war crimes, becoming the first human garrison assigned to the Spire, now renamed the Embassy Citadel. Serana approached him, her massive wings partially retracted, her expression serene. She was visibly pregnant, the hybrid vector having successfully stabilized the KRYL reproductive cycle. The light beneath her skin pulsed not with urgency, but with the steady rhythm of new life. The Coalition ambassador has arrived for the quarterly review, she said, her voice soft. He brings the human offering, genetically purified soil samples for the lower nurseries. Kalen smiled, the gesture warm and genuine. I'll handle the negotiations. He's still trying to figure out why a winged vampire queen purrs when she's happy. Serana leaned her head against his chest, the rhythmic, soft purring starting immediately. She purrs, consort, Serana thought, the message filling his mind with possessive warmth. Because she is no longer alone. And because the tent is finally full. Kalen wrapped his arms around his queen, gazing at the future stretching before them. A difficult, necessary, and fiercely protected new world forged in the crucible of war, desperation, and an improbable, profound love.